Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2014 Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund Dinner. My name is Tom Hauser, Chief Political Reporter at 5 Eyewitness News. I will be your MC this evening, whether you like it or not. You are stuck with me. It's fun to see some old friends here tonight. You know who you are. I've also met some new friends tonight, which is part of what this event is all about. I have an interesting history in this building. I grew up about 5 minutes from here. I've been to a high school prom, a homecoming, countless weddings, and I've covered probably 5 elections in this very ballroom. You want to talk about battle scars? I'm mostly talking about prom in that circumstance. I had the privilege of serving as MC for last year's Say Thanks Day. Now, in contrast to today, those of you who were there know that that also involved, I believe it was a 5K run. It seemed like a marathon because it was about 130 degrees, in stark contrast to the weather outside tonight. But I'm grateful that all of you took time out from your busy schedules to join us here tonight, despite the frightful weather outside this spring in Minnesota. And again, it is an honor to be here. It's going to be a great evening of inspiring stories from some fantastic speakers. And this is a cause that is near and dear to my heart because of my family's own military history. My dad was a captain in the Air Force who served with distinction and came home and lived the American dream. Started a family, served a 40-year career as a doctor. And not only did he start a family, he had 8 kids. Talk about serving with distinction. My dad had a lot of American dreams, apparently. But a couple of my uncles were not as fortunate as my dad, and I just want to highlight a couple of them tonight to give you an idea of why this is so truly important to me. I want us all to remember tonight my uncle Rod McGinnis, who used to fly as a naval aviator, a Navy navigator off the USS Coral Sea. He, very early in the Vietnam War, technically before it was even a war, in 1964 was flying a reconnaissance mission and off the USS Coral Sea, and his plane just never came back. They never found him. They never found the pilot. They never found any wreckage. He flew off the aircraft carrier, and they never came back. I was only 3 years old at the time that this happened, but my older brothers and older sister tell me they will never forget, even though they were young children themselves, when the naval officer and chaplain knocked on our door on Grimes Avenue in Edina, and my mom answered the door. She collapsed before they said a word because she knew that her baby brother was gone. She lived another 30 years after that, and I can tell you she could never talk about her brother Rod without tears in her eyes. And then there was my Uncle Len Guerin, who was a highly decorated bomber pilot who flew missions over Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam. He also survived, like my dad did. Unfortunately, he paid the ultimate sacrifice a few years after the war when he died of Agent Orange poisoning. For those of you not familiar, that was the herbicide that they used to defoliate the jungles in Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and places like that. I remember the last time I saw him. I walk into our house in Edina, and he's down having a beer with my dad at the bar in the basement, and my uncle's skin was literally falling off his body. But he had no regrets. He served his country with honor and with distinction. Never wanted to be called a hero, but he knew he did his duty. And I learned a lot just from the examples that my dad set and that my uncle set. I had other uncles who served as well, but I just wanted to highlight those two. Like the members of my family who felt the call to serve in times of crisis and confusion, there are countless heroes among us each day, including in most of your families, if not all of them. From brothers and sisters in your own family to the woman at the airport or the man passing you on the street, we see them, but we don't often recognize them, these heroes in plain clothes who walk amongst us. We're here tonight to see and to recognize. Every one of our brave service members deserves profound recognition, our utmost respect, and a sincere thank you. Many of them are still serving and will be deployed again in the very near term. It's a community effort, and we're here tonight again as a community. By joining together, we are creating something of lasting value that is invaluable. That's what MMAF has been doing since it was founded in 2005, raising, now get this, more than $15 million. Together, we can continue to say thanks, keep this statewide effort strong and vital, and let our veterans know we are deeply grateful for their sacrifices. You'll hear from many people tonight, among them a dedicated father of a wounded warrior and 2 Navy SEALs. These men have endured rigorous training, toured war-torn regions like Iraq, Lebanon, and Southeast Asia, and sustained many injuries as a result of their service. It's a brotherhood of incredible stories, of overcoming the seemingly impossible and of difficult sacrifices. Through it all, they have held strong to the values of teamwork, leadership, and performance that the SEALs' perspective has taught them. Today, they pass that perspective on to others in their communities and to you here tonight. It's about believing in yourself and your country and realizing you can do as much or more than you think you can, and it can have as much or more impact than you think it will. We look forward to hearing their insights and experiences later tonight. I'm sure they will inspire all of us and also remind us why we are thankful and why we are here tonight. Now, to begin our evening, please stand as members of the Minnesota National Guard 34th Infantry Color Guard present our colors.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
And thank you for that beautiful performance of the Star-Spangled Banner. The ensemble singers of VocalEssence are directed by Philip Brunel. VocalEssence was formed in 1991 and is a critically acclaimed professional chorus, obviously, and we are thrilled to have them performing for us this evening. Now, the next song is the Armed Forces Medley, and we ask members of each branch to please stand as your military affiliation is recognized.
Over hill, over dale, we will hit the dusty trail, and the caissons go rolling along. Hear them out, hear them shout, mountain march and right about, and the caissons go rolling along.
My thanks again to VocalEssence and also to the color guard from the 34th Infantry of the Minnesota National Guard. For our invocation tonight, please welcome Chaplain Philip Wynn, Jr., who serves as the full-time Minnesota National Guard chaplain. He has served multiple active duty deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and we are honored to have Chaplain Wynn with us tonight. Chaplain?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tom, I want to thank you for sharing the story in regards to your family receiving some crushing news about the loss of a loved one in combat. Sadly, Minnesota families have had this experience dozens of times since 2001, and chaplains have been there to perform their sacred duty to provide support to the loved ones of the fallen. Let's take a moment, if we will, to remember the fallen. And won't you join me in prayer tonight? Generous and ever-giving God, you are the author of all times and seasons. Seasons of spring, summer, fall, and Lord, even winter. I pray tonight, Lord, that you help us, in spite of the weather, to look forward to the signs of life that will soon be evident in the grass and the trees, the birds, and Lord, even in the thermometer. And help us to value life as a gift. I pray tonight that we remember the wisdom of King David, who after battle declared for all time that the share of those who engage the enemy in battle is to be the same as those who support the families and communities. We offer thanks tonight for those that have sacrificed so that others may live free. Will you watch over those in harm's way and comfort their families? We offer further thanks, Lord, for those who have generously supported the warrior. I pray tonight that you bless them with health and a prosperous soul. Bless also tonight our food and take sickness far from the midst of us. And it's in faith and with grateful hearts that we ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Chaplain. Very important work, obviously, that he does and all of the chaplains in the military. Now, before I introduce our next guest, I would like to invite you to please start enjoying your salad. I think some of you are probably got a bit of a head start on my script. And quickly, before I introduce our next august speaker, I want to share one quick story with you. One of my favorite parts of my childhood. It involves my Uncle Len, who I talked about a moment ago, who died of Agent Orange. But when I was a kid and I was looking for something to bring to show and tell once, my mom said, "Oh, I have an idea." She brought me some of these letters that he would send home from Vietnam that the military censors had gotten a hold of, and some of you who served know what I'm talking about. There would be, you'd hold up a piece of paper, it would have a bunch of holes in it, because they would cut out anything that they thought might be sensitive material. So I showed those, and then my favorite thing, and I wish I still had it, I don't know what happened to it, but it was the pamphlets that they used to drop on the Viet Cong, inviting them to surrender to very friendly American soldiers. And I'll never forget the little cartoon character on there, "We'll shake your hand when you give up." But it was just some great memories I had of my uncles and their military service that to this day I think about quite a bit. Now tonight I am honored to introduce a man who without question, and I do mean without question, is one of the greatest soldiers of his generation and perhaps one of the greatest soldiers ever to represent the United States Army. He's probably embarrassed when he hears those words because I just met him a little bit ago and he seems like a humble man, but we're gonna tell you a little bit more about him. Born right here in Minneapolis and a proud member of the Minnesota National Guard at the ripe old age of 16, General John W. Vesey is the longest-serving active service member in U.S. history and the only soldier to attain every rank the Army had to offer. I already feel like an underachiever. In 1944, then First Sergeant Vesey earned a battlefield promotion to second lieutenant for his tenacity and valor during the Battle of Anzio, which succeeded in toppling fascist Italy and paved the way for Allied victory in World War II. Later, during the Vietnam War, then Lieutenant Colonel Vesey earned the Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership in defense of a fire support base during Operation Junction City. In 1982, General Vesey, you do see a pattern developing here, right? He became the 10th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Reagan and later championed the search for prisoners of war and service members listed as missing in action as a special emissary to Vietnam during the Clinton administration. General Vesey and the late Gene Sitt were good friends for many years, united in their love for the United States and equally passionate about recognizing the sacrifices our men and women in uniform make every day for our country. When Gene first had the idea to start MMAF, the first person he called was General Vesey. And tonight, we are honored to have General Vesey here to say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, General John William Vesey, Jr., United States Army.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks very much. I listened to that and I wanted to say, who's that guy? The organizers asked me to say a few words tonight, and immediately I thought of resurrecting some of those oratorical gems from my active duty days. Unfortunately, Skip Crosby came by and found that out apparently, and he said, Jack, I want you to know that they're not at all interested in your 45-year-old views on tank maintenance or helicopter operations or maybe even re-enlistment. So I'm left hence with a very few words. And those words are really one, and that is thanks. Thanks to all of you members of the military services that are here tonight for your service. Thanks to you veterans for your service. And a special thanks to Gene Sitt for starting this wonderful effort here in the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund. And thanks also to all of you who have supported that fund through the years. And I want to tell you that despite what you may read in the paper or hear from the mouths of political representatives or political leaders, this is not over. Today we have about 33,500 servicemen and women in Afghanistan. If the Afghan government eventually signs the agreement, and I feel that they probably will if they have any sense, we will continue to have somewhere between 8,000 to 12,000 servicemen and women in Afghanistan helping the Afghans. So the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund will have work to do in the years ahead, and I thank you for your support for that organization. I have one other duty that I was assigned here tonight, and that is to introduce the next speaker. Gene and Gail Sitt and Gail continues to be a wonderful contributor to the community in supporting higher education, supporting the arts at the Minneapolis Art Institute, the Minnesota Orchestra, many other community efforts. But those community efforts pale in sight of their greatest contribution to the community, and that was 6 handsome, intelligent, community-oriented children who themselves have been imbued with the SIT family code. Son number 2, Roger, an Air Force Academy graduate in 1984, 6 years of active duty in the Air Force, Master of Science from Southern California, MBA from Harvard, many years of experience in the financial business, now Chairman and CEO of SIT Investment Associates, and more importantly, Chairman of the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund. So I wish you would help me welcome Roger SIT.
Thank you, General Vesey, for that very nice introduction. I'll just rip up my resume and rewrite it now. I'm so glad to see everyone here tonight, and thank you. Tonight, we honor military members for their commitment and sacrifices. We honor their families for their unending support and encouragement. And we thank all of them for their importance to our nation and the sacrifices they have made. We also want to extend our gratitude to everyone who has donated in the past and who has donated tonight. Thanks to your generous contributions, Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund has provided 15,075 grants, totaling more than $9.2 million over the last 9 years. That is a tremendous gift of gratitude directly benefiting our service members and their families. 500 grants were awarded to over 14,500 Minnesota service members who served honorably in a combat zone without injury. $2,000 grants were awarded to 435 Purple Heart recipients, and 120 of those Purple Heart recipients received a second grant up to $8,000 based on the severity of their injuries. $5,000 grants have been given to 63 families of those service members who were unfortunately killed in action. There are no conditions for how the grant is spent. MMAF grants have helped meet various financial needs, home repairs and rent, school tuition, and sadly, funeral expenses, and some have even donated to other causes. I want to note that we continue with a solid track record of giving 90%, that's 90%, of every dollar raised directly to the troops. While these grants are small relative to the commitment and sacrifice our service members and their families are making, we want them to know we are thinking about them and appreciate what they're doing for our country. Now, as General Vesey highlighted, we've heard a lot and read a lot in the press about the war winding down. And what does that mean for the mission of MMAF? And as the General highlighted, the landscape really has not changed. Minnesotans continue to be sent to hostile areas. And while we wish that the wind down meant that everybody was coming home, they're still being sent over there, perhaps for different reasons. Second, what we found is that as long as conflict continue to arise around the world, U.S. service members will be called to help in the situation. So while, yes, 2 long wars are winding down, or supposedly winding down, we must take a look at the current numbers. Minnesota service member deployments are scheduled to continue. National Guard deployments were roughly 500 to 600 military members in 2013. and roughly the same amount are scheduled to be deployed again in 2014. These estimated deployments in 2014 are just our Minnesota National Guard. That does not account for active duty military as well as reserve officers and enlisted people. From a global perspective, U.S. Congress has stated that the United States has active duty military troops stationed in nearly 150 countries. With these counts, we do not include the Navy or Marine Corps that are at sea. Of course, these numbers could change at any time depending on the news and where the conflict is occurring. So the reality is deployments will continue as long as conflicts exist in the world. And as long as our country seeks to defend others, these brave men and women will continue to serve. And as long as they continue to serve, our mission of MMAF is to continue to say thanks for their efforts and their sacrifices. As such, the future focus of MMAF will be the same as it has been in the past and is currently in the present, and that is to provide cash grants to our service members and their families for the hours, the stress, the risks, and the unknowns they endure. We want them to know that we recognize and appreciate what they are doing for our country. We hope all our generous individual and corporate donors, as well as those who fundraise on our behalf, will continue to provide the much-needed support. And as we hope to see many of you in September at our walk and run on Say Thanks Day, that will occur sometime in mid-September. In closing, again, let me thank you all for your support, for being here tonight, as well for your ongoing support of saying thanks to our military and their family. And finally, let me also thank one more time our military service members and their families for their service to our country and for allowing us our freedom. Thank you very much.
And to give you an idea of what a professional Roger is, he did not walk away with my scripts too. He only took what he came up here with. That has happened to me before. And you might as well be naked on the stage when somebody takes all of your scripts. But he's a pro, what can I say? By the way, I've known Roger since we played Little League Baseball together 150 years ago, roughly. And it's great to see that he's gone on to succeed, although we had a pretty good team. I was going to say succeed more than our team did, but as I recall, we had a pretty good team that year. Now, at each table tonight, you have probably noticed there's going to be an additional meal served, but there are also some MREs at each of your tables. These are meals ready to eat. They are the standard for our deployed military personnel serving in combat zones. It is a small symbol of the larger sacrifice they make for us, and I hope you'll pass it around, sample the food, and think about our troops eating an MRE dinner in a faraway land. And as we think about those far away, we remember those who did not make it home. Our fallen cannot be forgotten. I would like to direct your attention to stage left. If you would pay attention for one moment, stage left, you will notice that we want to remember the POWs and the MIAs and direct your attention to our empty table that represents the missing soldier, again, over stage left. Each item is significant. The single red rose reminds us of the families who keep safe waiting for their return. The candle that's lit represents their unconquerable spirit. The slice of lemon on the plate represents their bitter fate. And the glass inverted represents they're not here to toast with us tonight. So please keep that in mind while you are having your meal tonight. We will now have a 20-minute break for dinner. Please enjoy your meal, and the program will resume after you're done eating. Thank you, everyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention once again? It appears we have all gotten started on those salads. Oh, wait, that was an hour ago. It looks like you should be nearing completion of your dinner and maybe even your dessert. And I hope we can have your attention because we have some outstanding speakers that we would like you to hear from. You quiet down faster than my children, so I'm very impressed. I hope you've enjoyed your dinner. We're now going to continue with the program. And up next, I would like to introduce Boyd Francisco. He is the father of specialist Christopher Francisco, who received a $10,000 MMAF grant for injuries sustained in Afghanistan. Boyd is going to share his experiences as the father of a wounded warrior. Let's please welcome Boyd Francisco.
As Tom mentioned, I'm Boyd Francisco, and my wife, Lori, is here tonight also. We're delighted to have this opportunity to join you and share a little of our son Christopher's story from a parent's viewpoint. This evening is not about Lori and me. It's about soldiers like our son Chris and the support we have received from this wonderful organization. The impact of your generosity is felt greatly, and I think other parents will relate very well with our story, even though we all experience different events in life. Lori and I were blessed with two young, brave men in our lives, our boys, Christopher and Benjamin. Like most parents, we worried over the success and safety of our children. As they grew, we watched them work hard and perform at school programs like band concerts and sporting events. We comforted them when they were sad or sick, and always tried our best to lift their spirits and encourage them to work hard and dream big. As parents, you invest so much of yourself into their development that you often forget your own needs. Then a day comes when you are reminded that without a doubt, they're grown up. For Lori and I, that day came in January 2009, when both Chris and Ben enlisted in the Minnesota Army National Guard to serve this country during a time of war. Benjamin went on to become an officer, while Chris chose a different path, expanding his Minnesota National Guard duty to assist the active Army through a program called Active First, which uses National Guard members to fill needs in the active Army. Chris was on loan to the U.S. Army 101st Airborne when he told us he was being deployed to Afghanistan as a patrol gunner, a service position that had already lost many of our soldiers in battle. As a parent, your reaction starts with a gasp. Then you stop sleeping well at night, if at all, because your mind spins with all the unknown possibilities. You pray constantly that your son will come home alive, and you worry about getting that dreaded life-changing phone call notifying you that something has happened to your son, your child, your soldier. On June 10th, 2010, the phone rang. It was very early, but since neither Lori or I had slept since Chris deployed, we looked at each other for a moment as the phone continued ringing and knew that at this hour, it couldn't be something good. Lori answered the phone, and it was the logistics captain at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the rear detachment officer for Christopher's deployment. As you can imagine, Lori broke down in tears and could not listen to what the captain was saying, so she handed the phone to me with the mistaken belief that I could handle the call better. As the captain spoke, all I heard was that Chris was hit with an IED on a night patrol mission. The part about them having stabilized his blood loss and most severe injuries didn't register. But through the fog of shock and fear, I heard him say we likely would need to travel to Landstuhl, Germany, and that he would keep us posted on Christopher's condition. I knew that when soldiers are brought to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center and the family is invited to visit there, it's because doctors don't feel the soldier has much time left. We hung up the phone, and I remember only a blur of skipped heartbeats and gasping breaths growing in number from this point forward. A short time later, we received word that Chris was being airlifted from Landstuhl to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. Thankfully, he was stable enough that we didn't have to travel to Germany, but our hearts sank with the realization that many other parents would have to make that trip. We didn't wait for the Army's word to go, and we jumped on the first flight to D.C. We were there to see our broken and tattered son when he arrived at Walter Reed. We ended up staying in D.C. for 2.5 months while he was patient there. As his physical condition slowly improved, however, a new concern developed. On the nights we stayed with Chris in his hospital room, we observed his terrifying nightmares of being trapped in the mangled convoy truck in Afghanistan and being captured and tortured while he lay bleeding. We wanted to take his fear away, and we hoped that spending all day and all night in the room with him would remind him that he was safe. Then just when you think you're making progress helping with the nightmares, someone down the hall slams the door shut to another patient's room. The loud boom puts your soldier in the rough emotional state that only quiet time will calm. But a trauma like Chris had experienced doesn't easily release the mind. Sometime later, Chris was airlifted from Walter Reed back to the Minneapolis VA Hospital Polytrauma Unit. We continued to spend much of our time with him as he was treated. 2.5 months after his polytrauma stay, he finally was placed in outpatient status and sent to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for medical retirement board processing. Now medically retired, he has returned to Minnesota. It's been a long road to say the least, but we have received outstanding support from MMAF. When your soldier feels that he isn't worthy, you get a note from MMAF indicating he is being recognized for his service. I don't think there's a single soldier that doesn't have pressing financial concerns, and a grant from MMAF can be an immense relief for soldiers and their families. Christopher has received special recognition of being MMAF's 15,000th grant recipient. But along with the monetary support, the appreciation for his service and sacrifices has been equally as important. So thank you for being here tonight. Your continued support to help Christopher and other military families like ours really helps as we continue down the long and difficult road to recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boyd, for that amazing story. And any of you who are a parent in the room know exactly or have some idea of what he was going through. Now, without any further ado, let me introduce an American hero, Specialist Christopher Francisco.
How are you guys doing tonight? Usually when I get up and make a speech, it ends up with bad Family Guy jokes. So instead of winging it, I'll just read from my notes. I've been extremely lucky amongst hundreds and thousands who are in my shoes and worse. I've been through the rock, dust, dangers, and smells of Afghanistan. Though I feel I've done less than the average soldier, I've been extremely blessed with this wonderful gift. Not just money, but mainly the support of a whole state of people that show appreciation to their service members. And my grant was one of many ways for people to say thank you for your service and all that you've done. I've heard from friends and even random strangers say that they feel safer at night because they know people like me and others in this room are out there protecting them and their children. And that kind of gratitude means a lot. A simple donation can be enough to pay for bills, help a family, even get a struggling soldier on his feet. And even a brief expression of thanks can give one a new view on life. And that's what being the recipient has done for me. It's helped me want to enjoy life again and get out there, and continue serving my community. Through the MMAF, I was introduced to and am now a member of the Minnesota Warriors hockey team. And seeing the positive experiences I and other players are gaining, I am working to expand on another event for soldiers and vets here in Minnesota called Fishing for Freedom. And it should be beneficial, especially to those struggling with recovery and would otherwise just sit inside all day. Many of these soldiers are still unused to civilian life and feel that the world has forgotten them. Well, I want to get them outside, interacting with others, and enjoying life once again. So my grant helped me come back from what was an extremely difficult time. Had my sister-in-law not forced me to sign up for the MMAF grant, it would have taken a lot longer to do so. It's really amazing, you guys all out here right now, and it kind of chokes me up a bit, because a lot of people say that you're a hero and you don't feel like it, but you get a room full of people that say otherwise. You kind of start to wonder. You call me a horse once, you slap them in the face. You call me a horse twice, think about it, and then the third time you got to start buying the horse and saddle. But I have an outstanding support group through this experience. My family, my Army brothers and sisters, my friends, and now my new friends here at MMAF. I know that I'm not the only one that can benefit from this amazing organization, so thank you guys very much from the bottom of my heart.
Christopher, thank you for those great words, and I'm sure everybody in this room is happy to hear how much that MMAF grant means, but even more than that, the fact that all of you took time out tonight to come here, aside from the money, means as much or more, it sounds like to him, a true American hero, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thank you for your service, and we are all so grateful that you are here. Thank you again to Francisco, Boyd, and Christopher Francisco. Now, I am told, let me see if I can synchronize my watch here, that our next guest should have parachuted onto the roof just a few moments ago, probably rappelling down the side of the building right now and should be coming in those side doors at any moment. So if you can just, we're kidding, but the reality is these guys could do that, which is amazing. I had dinner next to one of them, and I kept a close eye on him every time he had a fork in his hand. I didn't know what he was going to do with it, but I know what he can do with it, so that was just enough. I would like to introduce our keynote speakers tonight. First, we have an Iraq War veteran who planned and led an assault on the world's biggest oil platform in the largest special operations mission in history. He also planned, built, and directed the creation of a new 300-person SEAL command designed to undertake sensitive missions critical to the U.S. Navy's efforts in the War on Terror. He is now the CEO and founder of Sealed Mindset, a Navy SEAL-inspired defense training center in New Hope, Minnesota, where he translates his own experiences and leadership lessons into education for corporations, schools, and families to continue living our lives safely by being better prepared, more observant, and having a plan. Perhaps you've seen some of his work featured on 5 Eyewitness News. Please welcome retired Lieutenant Lawrence Yatch, United States Navy. Welcome, Larry. And next, I would like you to join me in welcoming one of the premier sniper instructors of the U.S. military. You've heard of Marcus Luttrell, who wrote the book Lone Survivor that has recently been made into an outstanding movie. Our next guest trained him, not in acting, but in actual Navy SEAL stuff. In fact, he served 16 years in the U.S. Navy and 10 years in SEAL teams and served as a master training specialist at the SEAL Sniper School in Coronado, California. He is an expert of technical and physical surveillance. In fact, he's been looking over each and every one of you tonight. He also knows where you all live, so just keep that in mind as you walk to the parking lot. He was also part of an elite group, hand-selected to perform intelligence collection in areas around the world. He now runs Average Frog, a human performance company that empowers average people to become extraordinary leaders. Please welcome retired Special Warfare Operator, First Class, Eric Davis. These two Navy SEALs have carried out some incredible operations together, and we are beyond proud to have them here to join together on one more mission, and that is to present to you a few words about their amazing experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them.
Thank you. So, before I start, one of the primary things that goes into every operation that we do are what we refer to as contingency plans. So that's planning for problems that don't yet exist and coming up with solutions for them before they become a problem. I've heard of the wonderful speakers that you've had in the past years, and when looking at their resumes and their experiences, I imagine that some problems may come up with having Eric and I up here. So I've built in a safety valve, and all of you must participate in this safety valve. I was recently at an event for a launch of a new product, and I was sitting with the management team. There's 200 people in the room, and the marketing department would go up to speak about something. And they would pause, and then the head of marketing would clap, and then everyone else would clap. So if at any point I or Eric say something inappropriate, off of what we should be talking about, my wife, who is sitting up here, has been tasked with clapping loudly. So if you hear a single loud clap, everyone else join in, and it'll go very well.
Am I on? So could we test that, Ann? Just one time. We've got to make sure it works.
Just once.
Probably won't happen. You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
So first off, I want to thank all of you for coming and having us here, and thank all of you for contributing to this wonderful organization. I wanted to thank Skip for being able to have the vision to see beyond what he had to deal with me on a daily basis, that we could actually provide benefit for all of you, as well as Roger for being able to meet with me and have the faith in me to suggest that Eric come to back me up on yet another mission. So thank all of you for having us.
Indeed. And Larry and I have had the opportunity to infiltrate many, many places, and I think this is our biggest so far. So I thank you for that, for letting us in, and some of the poor judgment that might have gone ahead of us. Because we've relied on that often and many times, and I think we'll continue to do so. But it is truly an honor to get to be here and to hear some of the speakers that came before us. And most importantly, I know I speak for both Larry and I, where we just thank you on the front end to have the opportunity to continue to contribute to such a great cause, but also to our veterans, right, our military. And they talked a little bit about, the war winding down, but we're always going to have men and women out there on the front lines. And we're always going to depend on them. And I know sometimes, now that we're back here, we can all get a little fatigued, a little tired of it. And sometimes, we don't want to watch the news. We don't want to pay attention to it because it just gets hard. But those guys are out there right now today, like right this moment. Those MREs you ate, they're eating them right now. So we owe it to them to stay engaged. So thank you again on the front end for us being part of that. So thanks.
We're going to start with just giving you a bit of a framework on what we're going to cover. We're going to start with talking about what it took for the two of us just to get to the opportunity to test ourselves at basic SEAL training at BUD/S. Then we're going to go into the specific things that we saw as common among the guys that actually made it through what is routinely considered the hardest training in the world. We'll go into operations, what it means to be operational and what it means to have to innovate in the face of great danger. And finally, and most importantly, we're going to end on the sacrifices that both the operators that are overseas right now have to do, as well as, and more importantly, the families that are back home. So, starting with how I got to become a SEAL, I blame it all on Tom Cruise. I was not 3 years old, in third grade, and I saw Top Gun. By the end of the movie, I had figured out that I needed to be a fighter pilot, and that was the only choice for me. Within about 2 weeks, my dad had shown me the movie The Right Stuff, and all of the coolest pilots, test pilots, astronauts all went to the Naval Academy. So now here's a third grader that wants to be a fighter pilot and go to the Naval Academy. It took a number of years to get there, but I did get into the Naval Academy. For me, that was part of the most challenging path to SEAL training. There was over 12,000 applicants for my freshman class. Only 1,200 got a chance to get to the academy. Once again, I had to rely on people with very poor judgment to be able to move forward. Once I got into the Naval Academy, I quickly realized that I was out of my element, and there was quite a few smarter people there. It took all I had just to graduate. But what became more challenging was that over 250 of them had said, I want to be a Navy SEAL. They saw Top Gun, they saw Navy SEALs, they saw something just like me. Over the 4 years we competed, and by our senior year it was down to 53 people. Those 53 guys were all extremely qualified to become SEALs. They went through a series of 3 tests, and eventually 15 of us were selected just to the opportunity to go and test ourselves at SEAL training. It went from 12,000 to 15. One of the critical aspects to me in going through this path was I still remember the exact brick that I was standing on at the Naval Academy when I came to the realization that I was a Navy SEAL. And that's a really important distinction. There was no belief in this. There was no hope or faith. I knew to the core of my being that I was a Navy SEAL already. And all of the steps that I would have to go through were just obstacles to prove to everyone else what I already was. And that distinction between knowledge and belief is a critical aspect to being able to going through all of this training and being successful. I know for Eric, he was not inspired by Tom Cruise, and his path was a little bit different.
So nothing so silly as Tom Cruise would have brought me in. It was actually Charlie Sheen. So I one-upped Larry again tonight. So, I think it's important we understand, why all of us serve, and that's why we're sharing our stories here and like our pathway. And I think for a lot of us in the military, it begins with something we're after. I think that commitment and the honor and the peace that is something you learn in the military when you start to turn that selfish desire outwards. For me, it began by watching my father. Actually, he was a sheriff. My grandfather, FBI. My great-great-grandfather, sheriff. That's all I ever wanted to do from the time I was a little redhead kid until I was the specimen before you. That was it.
Little redheaded kid, still.
So you obviously can't just go do that when you're 17 years old, so I joined the military, and I actually joined Army Airborne Rangers right off the bat because it was just the best I knew of. And then, lo and behold, this movie comes out in 1990, Navy SEALs, and Charlie Sheen once again. But it wasn't anything between the Army or the Navy, but what I had realized is that there was a Special Forces group that had everything to do with the ocean. And being that I surfed all my life, that's all I wanted to do. I thought, holy smokes, I can go surf, live in California, and be in the Special Forces. I don't have to go out to Fort Benning, Georgia, or some of these other places that have frozen lakes, for example, and still serve.
Just for clarification,
Oh, no.
Eric flew in today, or not today, a couple days ago, picked him up from the airport. And it wasn't, hey, Larry, it's been a while, I missed you, how's it going? He said, there's frozen lakes out here. Like, there's whole lakes that there's no water in them. We were driving home, and we were by Minnetonka, and I said, we'll drive out in the middle. Nope. You cannot drive a car on a lake. Doesn't work. No, really, Eric, it's okay. You can step on it. You can walk it. No, I am not stepping on that lake. So
It's clearly not natural, so we skipped that. So I went right on back to the recruiter, Army recruiter, explained to him that I am now forced to move over to the Navy side because of the whole ocean thing. He was very generous and graceful and let me move over. I walked over to the Navy recruiting office, and they showed me this video. And they showed me a video about the training, and I was just enamored. It looked like the most difficult, most horrid thing that I could possibly expose myself to. And I told my buddy who was joining with me, like, that is what we have to do. If we're going to do this, we got to go big. My buddy did not come with me, by the way. He's like, you're on your own. But the reason I bring that up is I felt that's what I had to do because I believed, like had Larry mentioned, I believed that I could do it. And since it was something I believed that I could do, I felt like I had an obligation. And I think the gentleman that just spoke before us, that's what he was speaking of, that he could go, that he was somebody who could stand up and go into harm's way and deal with that. It becomes a certain kind of obligation. And I think our stories there mirror all the others that have come before us and the ones that are going to come behind us and some of these brave men and women. So just something to kind of notice. I think that's a common thread through all of us. Then we're off to buds from here, right, Larry? Once we decided to go and you actually got yourself in?
it was a little bit easier for him. He just had to sign a paper. I had to compete with
This is true.
12,000 of the most qualified people in the country. But, you know, there's no judgment. No judgment here. None at all.
Hey, if you want to make it hard on yourself. You know.
So getting into SEAL training. SEAL training is called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. That's the basic training for SEALs. Basic training for SEALs is just over 6 months long. Just to give you a sense of the difficulty, I'm a marginal engineer, I guess you would say. It was at the Naval Academy, they had all the major engineering things, systems engineering, mechanical, aeronautical. I was in general engineering. That was special ed engineering. It was for me and the football players.
Wait a minute. So that's a real degree, engineering, and I don't know anything about engineering, but I do know if you install a garage door opener,
We don't want
that
to
you
go
do
there.
not cut through those weight-bearing structures over 75%. So we do keep a track. So just a little something about Larry. We've been keeping track for about 15 years how many times that degree has come in handy.
I got up to 7, and
Yes.
then he asked me to install his garage door opener, and I cut through one of the beams. He went to sell the house, and it was a structural beam, which caused the house sale not to go through. So I got back to 0. I'm at 4 now.
Yeah,
Your tax dollars at work, just letting you know.
marginally at work, yes, yes.
So I get to my SEAL training class. I was one of 11 officers, and we are trained right alongside with the enlisted guys. It's the same exact training. That's very unique in the military, that you would train both officer and enlisted, not only side by side, but through the exact same training. Altogether, we had 135 sailors in my training class. Within the first 2 weeks of what they call an indoctrination, indoc phase, we were down to 121. All of those guys quit. The first 4 weeks of training, we went from 121 to 60. The vast majority of those people quit. If you ever run across someone that says, I went to SEAL training and the instructors didn't like me, that's code for I quit. I got hurt. Oh, that's code for I quit. the vast majority of people quit. There are some people that get hurt, but they get the option to come back to try again. There's very few. It has to be a very, very bad injury to be dropped from training through medical reasons. The start of the 5th week, the reason that's important, and for us, it was Hell Week. Hell Week starts Sunday afternoon, and you go constant physical activity, no sleep, no rest. You are constantly wet, constantly sandy. If they're around you, they're yelling at you. The first time we were able to get sleep was Wednesday night. We got 30 minutes. Well, let me rephrase that. We got the option of 30 minutes of sleep, but since your sleep is on a cot with no blankets, no sheets, in an open-sided tent on the beach in Coronado, I was going through in November, not a lot of sleep going on, a lot more shivering. The next chance you get for sleep is Thursday. You get another solid 30-minute option to sleep. You do constant physical activity until Friday afternoon at some point. In just those 5 days, we went from 60 people down to 30. By the end of the training, so we've got another almost 5 months of training, we lost half of our class again. We started with 135, and 6 months later, we graduated 11 of those original 135. Because we were a winter class, we had a higher attrition rate than normal of about just over 90%, but the average attrition rate is 80%, and that's been consistent since SEAL training started in the mid-1940s. One of the critical aspects to what challenges so many people in SEAL training is the fact that failure is inevitable. You cannot be right. For 6 months, you're wrong. Simple example, we do timed runs every week. But a timed run in the normal military is run around a track or run down the road for so far, turn around, come back. For us, it's wearing boots and long pants in soft sand on the beach, 4 miles every week. So you're running, and you finished first. Like, you have really succeeded on this run. No, you're wrong. You left your class behind. Okay, well, next run, I'm going to slow it down a bit, be in the top 12 or so. No, you're wrong. You aren't living up to your potential. You could run faster. They know it now. Okay, I'll just be last, right? If I'm last, I can't get wrong. Nope, you're wrong. You're in the goon squad. You get extra attention for being slow. It is impossible to be right. You start every evolution knowing that you're wrong and that you can't really get good at it. Look at the picture there, the mud. It's impossible to be good at being muddy and cold. You can get used to it, but you can't win. And the whole point is, all of these young men go in, and they all have different mindsets. Some of them are similar, some of them are very different. The basics of the training is to weed out the mindsets that aren't correct, that aren't going to serve them well in the actual SEALs. And the rest of the training, all of the physicality of it, the cold, the running, the constant abuse of the instructors, being confronted with situations like in the lower left, those boats are just over 12 feet long. That means those swells are close to 20 feet long, 20 feet high. There's no way that you're getting through that surf. Yet they will stop. You'll be doing something relatively productive in training. They'll stop training when the surf's big just to bring the boats out to watch you not be able to get through the surf. The point being is the type of person that can be in an environment where they know from the get-go that you can't win, that suffering and failure is part of the equation, and that they do it anyway. And not only do they do it, but they have the mindset, they have the belief, the knowledge that they're going to succeed, even if they're wrong. And then come tomorrow, they're going to do it again. And come tomorrow, they're going to do it again. All of these tools are merely methods to be able to create and hone the right mindset. It is 100% mental. The physicality of it is the easy part. The other part in training that I really like to bring up, because this is a little bit different from what's expected, the guys that get through training, they have the right mindset. They get it developed and honed through all of the training. But what really makes the difference is the amount of care that they have. You wouldn't think that the world's deadliest special operators, it's more about heart and care and love than it is about violence. To get through SEAL training, you have to care so much that you don't care about anything else. You have to care so much that you don't care what your instructors think. You don't care what your classmates think. You don't care about the damage you're doing to your body. None of that matters. That translates directly into the real world. If you look in the left picture, the guy in the very right side of it, his name tag reads Monsieur. Mike Monsieur was a SEAL at SEAL Team 3, Eric and my SEAL team. He was on the roof with Chris Kyle and a number of other of our friends when a grenade was thrown on the roof. Without hesitation, he didn't think about it. He cared about his teammates so much that he threw himself on that grenade, absorbed the blast, and saved everyone on that roof. Being a warrior is not about violence, it is about love.
So Larry's talking about the need to care, and I mentioned earlier when we were talking about what led us to Buds, and I think I was describing it both somewhat selfish reasons, like there was something we were after. And the reason I'm so clear on that is because of what happened to me the first time I went to SEAL training. And I don't like to talk about this, by the way, I never do. But
I know the story, so you get the full deal. He didn't get out of this one.
Yeah. So that bell right there is something that you ring when you quit SEAL training. The first time I went to SEAL training, I'd already been in the military for 5 years, and I already had kids, and what do we call it? I got hurt?
No.
But the instructors didn't like me.
No.
Okay. So that's what it's good to have a friend like Larry around. So the first time I went to SEAL training, I definitely went with that idea of what I wanted to be, and it lasted about 5 minutes. And I wanted to go home and just be with my family, and I left SEAL training, and I literally got out of the Navy. But what happened when I was out, and the reason I do like to bring this up is because I was young, but it was one of those times in my life where I made a choice, I failed, I quit, whatever it was. But it was one of those times in my life where I realized I didn't want to let it define me. When I was just in my 20s, so I was still pretty young, just old enough to know that I didn't want to start my life out that way. So I was out enjoying my life, and it started to haunt me. This thing started to haunt me because it was something I knew I could do. I wasn't in training. It didn't get too hard. It didn't get too fast. It didn't get too far. I just left, and I knew I could complete it. So what you see there are the pictures of my why, of what had me go back. Because I realized it wasn't about me. It was about the other people I cared for. So since I already had kids, they were what was on my mind. I didn't want to show them or demonstrate to them to abandon my passion, to abandon my goal so early in life, or I justified leaving or quitting the first time so that I could go be with them. But then I realized that my job, my overarching mission was to be a father. So they gave me that kind of thing I was after, loving to protect and care for and demonstrate a good example. As a matter of fact, it got so permeated inside of me that bottle of shells. What I would do in training is every time it got hard, every time it got difficult, I would just think about my kids, and if they were staring at me or watching me, what would I do? How would I act? And I've taken that through SEAL training and out into business, and I'm always thinking about what kind of example or somebody else. It's an outward focus like Larry was talking about. So those shells right there are something that I would collect throughout training. So every time I was getting hammered in the sand, which they do to you often, You're bleeding, dripping sweats coming out of your eyes, you're spitting up all over the place, but since you're in the sand, there's always shells. So whenever it got difficult, I would grab these shells, put them in my pocket, and by the time I got done with training, obviously I ended up with this whole jar of shells that my kids now have to this day. The reason I wanted to share that, though, is that it was that moment of turning that focus from the inside out, and I think we can see that again across all of our service members, and again, those are all the people we're here to support. Those are the people we're looking after. That's what we're all here for, because these are all people that maybe whatever reason they came in for might have been something for themselves or something they were looking to get, but whatever reason they stayed and went into harm's way was definitely for something way outside of themselves. And that was what I experienced right away in SEAL training, because that's what SEAL training is built to do, is to pull out all that crap and get you down to what's real if there is something real inside of you there.
So all of this challenge of just getting through the training and being one of the select few that does really just leads up to going operational. There is not one SEAL that joins that does not pray for war. And that sounds weird, could even sound bad, but it's true. We're warriors through and through. Imagine being a football player that got to practice all the time, but never got to play a game, not even a scrimmage. It'd be horrible. For us, we trained, we on average lose 2 to 3 SEALs die every year in training, because we fight in training as hard as we plan to fight in the real world. And for us, it's all about going operational. It is all about getting out there and actually plying our trade to protect our country, to protect our fellow SEALs, to protect our way of life. One of the things that I'm most proud of throughout my entire career, I got to experience right next to Eric. We got to be paid pirates for the United States of America. It's a beautiful thing. This time frame is the summer of 2001. We're assigned, both of us assigned to the same platoon in SEAL Team 3. At the time, SEAL Team 3 was responsible for the Middle East. I wish I could say that I chose the Middle East because I wanted to be in the middle of it, but really I chose it so that I didn't have to go to the jungle and deal with bugs. That did not work out. They sent me to the Philippines anyway. The summer of 2001, one of the big challenges that the U.S. was having was Saddam was smuggling oil out of Iraq. He was doing that to not only get the revenue from it. The oil tankers on average held 1 million barrels of oil, worth, at the time they were saying 3 to 5 million per ship. Not only did that cash go straight into his pockets, but it allowed him to subsidize his normal oil sales and reduce his price. He knew that if he sent these vessels with guns on them, if they attacked us, well, it's an act of war, and we were just waiting for that. So what they would do is actually armor the vessels. They would set them up so that they were designed that when we went onto them, they would take down our helicopters. They'd electrify railings. They'd put barbed wire up. The other thing, which is one of the bad parts, is see the red line? That's the route they would take. That's within territorial waters of Iran. So he was setting it up so that all we had to do was be on one of those ships trying to get on when that broke that 12-mile barrier, and that's an act of war against Iran. There was only 2 small areas that the ships would have to come out of that 12-mile territorial water, which then allowed us the opportunity to board them and gain control of them. The problem was the time frame. There's literally minutes of time before they could be back in territorial waters. So they would armor them. They would weld them shut, the doors. They'd put 2 layers of steel on them. So when we would go on either through helicopters, fast roping, or through surface VBSS, where we'd take our special boats up to the sides, hook a ladder on the side and climb up, we would have a very short amount of time to be able to do it. The traditional methods of doing that were to use concrete saws to saw through all of the steel that they had on the bridge wings on all of the doors. The problem was they got so good at being able to armor these vessels that it would take 30, 45 minutes. We started having to bring extra tanks of gas to fill up these saws to get in. And so we had to innovate. And being a junior officer, this was my first platoon, I was just smart enough to appear really stupid. It's a gift.
He can nail it.
My first day, they gave me a computer and told me I was stuck on the computer and I wasn't allowed to do anything but watch all the grown-ups play. And what I did was set it up so the computer didn't work. I don't know. They gave me another one. That one didn't work. On the third one, they wouldn't let me touch computers anymore. And they gave me a breaching tool, a big metal claw that I got to break things with, right up my alley. It was perfect. So what we're going to do now is actually walk you through an assault. This is a complete assault from start to finish. You'll see a mix of footage. Most of it is going to be FLIR footage, which is infrared footage seeing heat from the helicopters that were using us supporting us. Do you want to go into our operational security protocols?
Yeah, so before Larry goes over the video, I want to just talk a little bit about, somebody asked us before the event a question about ROEs, which are rules of engagement, and how we felt about them and what they're for and how they work. When we were doing these boardings, Larry just described all the dangers. These are non-permissive. This is at night. I mean, that's incredible. That's a testament to the kind of technology we have. If you're there, it's just black. You cannot see anything. But they're very, very dangerous. So they send us in. They'll send SEALs in because of our training and because of the rules of engagement that we can abide by. There's something we have, the way they teach us to fight, actually, they call it, they always get what they deserve. So contrary to popular belief, SEALs aren't sent in just to destroy things. Matter of fact, most of our training is escalation of force and level of force. They teach us, that a gentle lady is going to get a gentle conversation to bring her to the side. An aggressor is going to get whatever an aggressor needs, and we scale that force up and down. So when we come onto these boats, and when you're looking at the video, I just want you to keep that in mind. As you'll see the object. It looks like they're subduing it like a disease almost, and it looks like a very aggressive. It's a very cool kind of video to watch. But one of the neatest things, or one of the most proudest moments of my life, is when we came off of one of these boats, and I believe we were talking to an admiral, and he brought up the conversation about the American flag on our shoulder. This is going to go back to why ROEs are so important and why we follow them. So we have black hoods on. We have black hoods on. Black body armor. It looks scary. I mean, when we come onto these ships and I've seen guys run. They're not going anywhere because they're on the ship, but it does look scary. But we wear these American flags for a reason, because when they understand that we're Americans, the black hoods aren't just, there is some intimidation factor, but it's to protect us from all the flame, and you'll see what we're talking about here. It's a protective measure, but it does look scary. But when they see this American flag, they know that they're safe. And that's why, to answer that question about rules of engagement and why they're so important, is that we have to conduct ourselves this way, because when they know that Americans are here and they know they're safe, what do you think happens to the escalation, as opposed to somebody that thinks they're about to have something very bad happen? So the moment we have the situation under control and identify ourselves as an American, it's incredible to see what people who cannot, you'll see, it's a fairly aggressive act, to see how people settle down and calm down and just totally comply in a very safe manner. So it's one of the proudest things I've ever seen our country do, and it's just a testament that when someone sees that flag, what it means to other people.
I do have a warning. None of this is classified footage. What we're about to talk about was written about in a book called Downrange. We're both honored to have been featured in the second chapter in that book. So what I'm showing you is not secret. but it is also something that very few people have seen. The reason being is you can see some of our tactics. Even though the tactics aren't secret, the less people that know about them, the more effective they are. So I would ask you to please not take any pictures, don't take any videos. Appreciate the footage that we're about to show you and keep it to yourself. With that being said, if you don't, Eric or I may show up in a very dark moment of your life, and we will have a discussion about bad decisions that you've made.
It'll be a very tactical email, straight to your inbox. Yes.
Mind hitting the video. It is a private video, so don't go searching for it. So what you're seeing, I'm going to try and annotate as we go. What you're seeing is FLIR footage, heat and dark. Right now, white is hot, black is cold, from helicopters. The two helicopters carry 8 SEALs each. In the rear helicopter, Eric sitting in the door is our sniper, covering our movement. Those helicopter pilots are unbelievable. This is pitch black. This is occurring in the middle of the night. There's no light. The ships run without lights. You can see that ship not only traveling 20 knots forward, but it's turning back to Iran as this goes on. Fast rope's going to go out. It's like a fireman's pole for SEALs. It's a rope about 2 inches thick that we grab onto and slide down. You're not connected to that rope at all. In one of the boardings, other than this one, we had 2 SEALs, myself being one of them, come off the line. What happened was they had strung wires up, so the helicopter had to stay really high. We had a 120-foot rope, yet we were 130 feet off the deck. The bridge wings that we were landing on were the size of your dinner table. So imagine hovering a helicopter over a moving ship in the middle of the night and having it be 100 feet off the deck so that the SEALs can slide down. At the time, we didn't use night vision, only the rope master. So the guy that was checking to see if the rope was on the deck, as soon as he turned and gave me the thumbs up, I went out the window without question, slid down the rope. When you watch this, you'll see the SEALs come sliding down the rope. But one of the last guys you'll see look like he climbs up, like he fell down and had to get up and climb over something. What happened was the helo drifted over the water, and as he was coming down, he noticed the ship was going past him, so he chicken winged the railing on the other side of it and had to climb up and over the railing. He was our radio guy. If he would have gone into the water, we would have had no idea. It's pitch black. He had over 35, 40 pounds of gear on. At this point...
Oh, sorry, Larry. Just something I want to point out, too. Now, I mean, the purpose here isn't to say, oh, geez, look what we did here. But since the purpose of our meeting here is to think about others and the men and women out here still doing these things, these guys, everything you're seeing, you know, Nate, the guy that went over to the side, these helicopter pilots, I mean, if you know anything about flying a helicopter, and if you don't, you can tell that that is a sketchy situation. But these guys have pictures of their families, right there on their dashboard, kind of like your car. These gentlemen sliding down and off the side of a boat with no flotation or minimal whatever minimum flotation we had to say we had, so they let us go on the mission. These are all guys just hanging it out there, laying it out there. And while this is our story, our platoon, but again, tonight, there are people out there doing it anyways. When they have loved ones right here that they're worried about them and they're vice versa. And I just think it's important. I get caught up watching these guys when I look back and think about, gosh, bless America, what are you guys doing? You have other things to take care of, but you're out here doing this for us. So just something to keep in mind when you see these guys moving.
What you're seeing now is the breaching. This was actually done after a successful boarding, but it gives you a perspective of the violence of using those saws to cut through steel. What I had determined when we were stuck on one of these vessels was that the front windows on the superstructure, they have to drive, so they got to be able to see through. So I made an assumption that they were light. They were the lightest guarded. So I came up with a method for rappelling over the front of these things, hanging by a nylon climbing rope while using a 18-inch concrete saw to saw through the steel that guarded the windows. You can see me hanging up there. You'll see a bunch of little black things. Those are sparks, the heat from cutting the metal. You see the bar falls? I still remember the thing that was going through my head at this point. Tom Cruise has nothing on me. I'm going to ask you guys to pause it in a second. I'll tell you when. Just be ready. In this particular case, we had a malfunction, so I was stuck by myself on the front of that ship. Normally, I would have Eric there with me, guarding me with his rifle, because all it would take is one guy with a boat pole to poke my rope, and down I go 120 feet, hitting the deck of a vessel.
And just to frame that again, I know Larry will only say a certain amount about that. So he is in front of hostile people who still yet to know who we are. And if you saw that video just beforehand, the flames coming in through the door, you can see that could like spark some fear, and bad choices or violent choices happen with fear. That's where they come from, right? So it's just another thing to witness there, and that's one of the things I love about Larry. You want to talk about somebody going in because they can. Like, that is all by yourself, hanging by literally a thread, with flames all around it, by the way, which is why that engineering degree is no good. Because that's fire. Yeah, and it's one string.
So this is a normal video camera to give you an idea of the actual degree of sparks. What you can't tell in here is in the middle of that big white mark I am sawn on the steel, and what is a testament to the brotherhood of SEALs, just to the left and a little bit up, you can kind of see the slight dark mark about 11 o'clock. That's Eric's head. He's hanging out there with me with a rifle, making sure that I'm safe. And the fact that he was willing to risk his life to make sure that my life was safe is a testament to not only the brotherhood of the SEALs, but why we are so close. Like Eric said, this is one story. We got back from this deployment, and 3 days later, September 11th happened. That was the start of our stories, being able to go and fight for our country and bring those to justice that caused us that terrible attack. One of the things before I move on, because I needed to shift gears here slightly, we are in our element in this environment. We want to be there. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come without sacrifice. The first sacrifice that operators have is going to be the physical sacrifice. I had been injured 3 separate times. My last injury, the picture that you see my wife there with me. This is in Bethesda. It was a major back injury. I had completely blown 2 discs in my low back. Eventually, they had to fuse them. I lost all feeling in my right leg and continue to only have partial feeling there. But I sustained that injury 8 months before the surgery. I didn't let anyone know because I was in charge of my SEAL platoon, and we were in a combat zone, and there was no way I was going to leave them there. And my story is not unique. My well-being, my physical well-being was so far down the list on my concerns that it barely registered. The second one is the mental stress, the mental challenges of being an operator. One of the things that surprised me, but it makes sense when we look back at it, is the Navy looks at us as weapon systems. We are no different than an airplane or a rifle. We have a cost to make, we have a cost to maintain, and we have a certain life cycle. And eventually that life cycle is going to end. Once it ends, they replace you. They have to. what was the most difficult thing mentally for me was the fact that as soon as I walked across that quarterdeck at SEAL Team 3, my first day, I remember calling my mom and saying, for the first time in my life, I feel like I fit somewhere. I belong here. And from that point forward, everything I did was for the team. I gave everything. My safety, my family's time with me. Yet, once I got injured, they had to move on. It's a one-sided deal here. And that can feel wrong, but in reality, we want the strongest military possible. We need to maintain that readiness. But that hurt doesn't go away. That one-sided deal does not go away.
So Larry's talking about the physical injuries he sustained, and again, our intent and our purpose here is just to take some of our stories to highlight the stories of everybody else, right? Just being an example. The other thing we see, and that you guys already know about, is the family side. And there's the family side, which is the real sacrifice. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here right at the end. But when these guys are deploying overseas, you're gone for long periods of time. So any of us with kids or children, nieces, nephew, anybody like that, if you just kind of close your eyes and think about how dear they are to you, and then imagine what that would feel like to come home and have them not recognize you. Like, these guys have to deal with that all the time. I mean, right, it's already hard enough to do, like, life, right? We gotta go to work, our job, and everything we have going on, but there's guys dealing with that every single day. You know, you wanna take them to baseball, you wanna take them to games, to Boy Scouts, everything like that. Those are all the things that these guys are missing, and we miss on a regular routine. So the personal sacrifice, you know, of course there's the PTSD, there's getting beat up with Larry, which what happens when you hang off the front of ships all the time. Surgeries, everything like that. But we also start pulling into this whole family side. And again, I know that's a primary mission here. That's one of the most important things for funds and groups like this. That can be a huge impact for some of these guys to help keep that stuff intact. And that's something that we really always need to be working and pay attention to and work with.
I knew we talked about this at a time, and he's supposed to say something else, but he was worried he's going to cry, so I'm going to say it because I think it's important.
I never cry except for in the middle bit.
What do you mean? Last week.
Yeah,
So I really want you to connect to the sacrifice of being gone and away from your family. So if you just do this for me, close your eyes for a second. Close your eyes. Think about the joy that you felt when you saw your child take their first step. Think about the joy that you felt when you saw your niece or your nephew come home from school with a project to put on your refrigerator. Think about the joy that you felt walking your daughter down the aisle for her wedding. Now imagine not being able to feel any of that, but have it be replaced by the guilt of not being there because you're overseas. That is a personal sacrifice that every soldier does. They care so much about their families that they're willing to sacrifice those amazing feelings. And that's something that is not thought about. It's easy to see the loss for the family when the father, the mother, the brother's not home, but it's just as hard on the actual soldiers that's gone because it's not their choice to be gone. They're there because they feel the obligation to keep us all safe. Shifting gears to the sacrifices of the families, this line, our dream, their nightmare. I've wanted to be a SEAL since 7th grade. I knew I was a SEAL my sophomore year in college. I got to hang from a ship and live my dream. Every time I deployed, I got to fight for our country, which could not have made me prouder. That's my dream. That wasn't my wife's dream. That wasn't my mother's dream. Wasn't my sister's dream. On the left side, you see a satellite phone. 3 days after the start of the Iraq War, we were about to insert from one forward operating base to another. We were getting onto a helicopter, and there was a Fox News journalist assigned to the helicopter. And he came to me as one of the officers and said, "Can I do an interview with you?" I noticed he had a sat phone attached to his belt. I said, "I'll do the interview if I can use your satellite phone." It had been over 3 months since they cut off communications between all of the soldiers and the families. So no emails, no phone calls, no letters, nothing, because the risk of an operational security of some information getting out and damaging or putting soldiers at risk was so great that there's no communication. So the war started, we were operating, and our families have no idea where we are other than that we're in danger. So he said, "Sure, no problem." Did the interview, grabbed the phone. I kind of walk off the helicopter because it was loud in there, dial the phone, rings a couple times, and my mom answers the phone. And I will never forget the joy in her voice when she heard my voice, and that I was alive and that I was okay. And this is what breaks my heart, that was immediately replaced by tears and horror, because being what we would say not very situationally aware, there was gunfire, explosions going off. For me, it was normal at this point. I didn't notice it. So she went from, "Larry, it's so great. What's that? What's behind you? Where are you?" And I could only reply with, "I love you. Tell everyone that I'm okay. And if you don't hear from me for a while, I'm okay." That is not a call any mother wants to get, and that's about as good a call as you get as a mother with someone in the military. The middle picture is a Skype. So I spent a year in Lebanon with one other Special Forces warrant officer. We were the only 2 U.S. military operating in the entire country. My wife was back home, and what I was doing was very sensitive, and so there was very limited communications, and as well as I was gone quite a bit. So we had a weekly Skype date where we would get on the computer and be able to see each other and talk even for a little bit. Unfortunately, a number of times, I missed that date. Imagine being her, where I'm supposed to be on at 7 o'clock, no one's there. And she's not going to hear from me for another 7 days, if not 14, if not 21. That's not a good place to be.
So on the right-hand side, it's something we do when we're overseas, and if we do have access to communication, we're calling to say goodbye oftentimes when we know we're going on a mission, and we see it in the movies, and we've heard some really similar real-life stories of that today. And we always do think it's tough on the soldiers end, the person deployed, which it is, but like Larry said, we've chose to be there one way or the other. We know that's our place to be. And we really want to work to highlight the family side, because they know too, right? When we call them once a week, twice a week, they know we're on the way out the door, and we call it like, we're calling to say goodbye to them, because it could be our last call, right? They think it's just a hello call and a check-in. There's always that thing lingering. And then that's what happens on the other side, right? And then this entire group knows that, right? So on one side, we have the soldier out in the field, and on the other side, we have the families who are left behind. And some of us make it back, some of us don't make it back. But regardless, now these families, no matter what the situation is, even if it was just fear and nothing ever happened, or it was fear and something almost terrible happened, or fear and the worst should happen, now we're back to a spot where we have these families who have to recover from that, re-enter a competitive marketplace, and try to move forward. And again, you guys all already know that. Now, Larry and I obviously are very, very close friends. But when we're operational, Larry's my OIC, was what we call that in the Navy, my officer in charge. All right, so I'm going to ask Larry again, as I look to him, as I always do, and especially when we're hanging over the side of a ship, which is not a good idea, but I have to do it because he told me to. But I always look to Larry, not only as a friend, but as a leader. So this is one of those times where, as we talk about the families in your mission here, where I think we can all look to Larry and hear a little bit about like your thoughts on what we're ultimately doing here and what we can all be doing more to help these guys.
So the Roger, Skip, Claudine, they were very clear as to what our purpose was tonight, to come in, share our story, provide you with some entertainment. But we, as SEALs, are not very good at following rules, so I'm going to break a rule that they gave us. They said our job was not to get you to give money or ask you to, but too damn bad. You can make a difference. It doesn't take much. Before I ask you to do that, I want to put a face to the challenges that your money can help. These faces are very important to both Eric and I. When you look at this picture, I imagine all of you, Navy SEALs. That's what they look like. Those are actors. Not one of those guys is a Navy SEAL. These are what Navy SEALs look like. Thanks for laughing. You better not be laughing at me, or I'll send Eric to talk to you. These guys you walk past in the street, you'd have no idea as long as you didn't look at them in the eyes. They're normal guys that are put in extraordinary situations. Every one of those guys I consider a brother. I would do anything for them and they'd do anything for me. The two guys in the middle, the guy with his arm around Glenn, we got Matt Mills and Glenn Doherty. They were in my last platoon. We went to war together on separate occasions. Both of them did things that, without a doubt, kept me safe. Glenn and Matt are no longer with us. Matt Mills was one of the 19 SEALs on the helicopter that went down in Afghanistan. One of the hardest things for me watching that story was when the names came out. Since I'm not family, even though I believe I am, no one's going to call me. I had to wait on the internet and scroll through pictures to see which one of my friends was dead. I lost 3 friends on that helicopter. Glenn Doherty was one of the nicest guys ever. He was one of the 2 SEALs that died in Benghazi. Woods, the other guy that was there, the other SEAL, his wife was my dentist when I was in San Diego. These are real people. They're no longer with us, but their families are. And when you give money, when you support this organization, people like Matt, people like Glenn, and their families receive not only the recognition and support that they deserve, but also some money that they could put to good use. So the last thing I'll say is that we appreciate the time that you've taken in listening to us. We want to ensure that you understand the point that we're solely sharing a story which is one of thousands. We are not unique. We're just an example. And with that, you never have to feel hopeless about what can I do with a wonderful organization like Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund. They provide a vehicle for you to make a difference, and you can do that. So thank you very much for spending your evenings with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words. It gives us all renewed purpose for why we're here. It's a great reminder for why we're here, that, as they mentioned, at this very moment, there are people out there risking their lives somewhere in the world to defend our country. And sometimes we lose sight of that because, after all, we're in a hotel ballroom, having a nice dinner. But it's great to remember that. Just a couple of quick observations. When you were talking about the Navy SEAL instructors making it impossible for you ever to be right, I did not realize till that very moment that my wife is a Navy SEAL instructor. I had no idea. I knew she was a very good swimmer. I had no idea. And occasionally she sneaks up on me, but beyond that, I had no idea. She was a Navy SEAL instructor. I also realized tonight why I didn't become a Navy SEAL. Now, we have Larry, who was inspired by Top Gun and Tom Cruise, and we have Navy SEAL and Charlie Sheen. I grew up watching McHale's Navy. So they got Tom Cruise and Charlie Sheen. I had Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway and Lester Gruber, whose main job in the military, I believe, was to run liquor out on the islands. And I had a little bit of F Troop mixed in there, too. This explains why I am not a Navy SEAL. Just a couple of my observations. I would like now to call Roger Sitt back up here to the stage. We have a special presentation. Roger?
Thank you, Tom. That's kind of hard to beat. But Eric and Larry, thank you very much for sharing with us your experiences and your insight. And your message has been very impactful, and I know everybody will remember it for many, many, many years to go. So thank you. As a token of our appreciation, I'd like to present each of you a Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund plaque that hopefully you will display prominently in your homes.
And again, thank you, Larry and Eric. That was really just outstanding. I will never forget that presentation. The video was unbelievable when you think about pitch blackness, and this guy is hanging off the front of a ship. It's absolutely remarkable. So I want to also thank Roger, of course, and I want to thank Christopher and Boyd. Let's have another round of applause for them. Another man who risked his life. It's great to have all of you here. And now we would like you to please stand as the honor guard comes up to retire our flag. Know that every single dollar that you donate tonight will go directly toward MMAF grants. And it's important to recognize why that is. SID Investments has underwritten the entire cost of this event tonight to ensure that every single dollar will go to the men and women who deserve this so richly. Let's have a round of applause for SID Investments. I should also mention that our speakers who are in demand have waived their speaking fees for tonight. Everybody you have seen involved with this has donated their time for this very worthy cause. As you know, a little thanks goes a long way toward letting our troops know that they are appreciated. We've heard that from a number of members of the military tonight. In fact, just by being here tonight, you have helped thank Minnesota troops, and at the tune, or to the tune, of $500,000 raised tonight alone. Let's have a big round of applause for all of you. And if you would remain standing, finally, I would like to welcome VocalEssence back to sing God Bless America and America the Beautiful. We so appreciate them performing for us tonight. Thank you again all for coming tonight and for your generosity. And remember, never forget the troops, the men and women of our military throughout the world, again, serving at this very moment. Ladies and gentlemen, VocalEssence.